Thank you, President Seshadri and Rotarian Madhu and Rotarian colleagues. I am going to present to you briefly a few important concepts and principles relating to personal financial planning. And I will use this opportunity to explain some of the important features of a few of the investment products that are available. And in a short presentation, it's impossible to cover all the financial products. So I've chosen to cover a couple of product categories extensively. As all of you know, money evokes extremely powerful human responses, emotive responses. And these responses could range from contentment, happiness, glee, euphoria, greed, fear, envy, even panic. It's because of these emotive responses that human beings give out towards money, coupled with lack of formal education and financial planning, and certain traits relating to human nature which I am going to cover during my presentation. Many people find it extremely difficult to implement objective financial planning in their life. So let me start with a basic definition for financial planning. I would consider financial plan which helps an individual to achieve his personal financial goals during a lifetime by optimally managing his finances. And it is in every human being's hands. Now, over the last 22 years, India has implemented economic reforms and we have seen the benefits of that. We have seen many things happen in our economy in terms of growth rates. From about 5.8 lakh crore economy, we have grown to something like 90 lakh crores last year, which is about 16x in the last 22 years. We have become the 8th largest or 9th largest economy in the world in nominal GDP terms. And if you were to compare on the purchasing power parity, India is actually the 3rd largest. So how did the Indians do in this period of 22 years of economic reforms and liberalization? And we have seen many entities being set up by private entrepreneurs as well as public enterprises. We have known the stories of how Infosys has created several millionaires and billionaires. So let's take a look at the wealth spectrum in India in terms of what has happened. The data that I am sharing with you is from Credit Suisse. And they are wealth management experts and they keep putting out these reports, and I have taken the report of 2010. There is an Indian classification of economic strata. This is an Indian definition, and you will find that in this pyramid there are 24 crore Indian families, and this pyramid represents the income of various people. What you find on the top, the 3, is actually 30 lakh families who are earning on an average 17 lakhs per year as income. That represents about 1.25% of the entire Indian families, households. The second category is earning between 3.5 lakhs to 17 lakhs. That represents yet another 12%. And the bottom that you see is actually 57% of the households, which are actually a deprived class. They are all earning less than 3.5 lakhs a year. In fact, if you break it down further, you will find many people below the poverty line. This is the status as of 2010, and it's fairly indicative for us in terms of understanding why Indians require to implement financial planning. Here I have got wealth. Now, people who have got a wealth in excess of $1 million US are considered to be wealthy. And within this wealth classification, you have the near HNIs towards the top. You have the billionaires, and these are Indians, mind you. There are totally 1,70,000 Indians as of 2010 who have got $1 million or more of wealth. And the wealth is defined as all your financial assets, including your real estate, minus your debts. And this pyramid indicates that it's a very, very small percentage of Indians who have actually become wealthy as of 2010. If you compare in terms of how do these Indians compare with the world's richest economies, for example, USA. There are some interesting statistics that are thrown up in the Credit Suisse report. Average Indian's wealth is about $5,578, and that of an American is about $2,48,900. Even if you were to adjust for the purchasing power parity between US dollar and Indian rupee, an average American is about 12 to 13 times wealthier as compared to the Indian. The second, if you look at, this is even more compelling. The classification of people who have got a wealth in excess of $100,000 which today's prices represents, let's say, 53 lakhs of rupees. In India, it's only 0.4% of the population who have got that much of wealth. Whereas in USA, nearly 36% of the people have got $100,000 or more. And yet another interesting statistic that comes out, if you do analysis of what is the cause of this wealth, you find that most of the Indians' wealth is actually in physical, tangible assets, such as real estate, agricultural fields, or whatever, and you have gold and other commodities. Indians do not expose themselves to the financial assets. The Americans are exactly the opposite of that. Most of the Americans are exposed to financial assets, and that comes out very clearly in the report as well. So, how did these Americans achieve this kind of a wealth? And we know that all the wealthiest people that you rank in terms of the world's most wealthiest, you have the Bill Gates, you have the Warren Buffett, you have the Carl Slim. In India, you have, for example, people like Mukesh Ambani, etc. All these people have created their wealth by setting up enterprises, by owning enterprises, which create immense amount of economic value. And because of the market valuation of these companies, these people have created that wealth in a very short period of time. So the case I am making is that there is a need for all of us to consider financial assets as equally important in terms of creating and building long-term wealth. Now, why do you require to do a financial planning? The essence of financial planning is either you are creating wealth or you are preserving wealth, or some people might be doing a combination of both. The reason you have to do this is there is that devil called inflation. That inflation erodes your current purchasing power and wealth. You no longer have this joint family system which used to be the savior for most of the families in the past. And you are finding that most of the people want to have holiday in Bahamas and cruise and so on and so forth. Your financial needs are actually increasing, growing. And your life expectancy is increasing. I'm going to shortly show you a chart on that. And the medical expenses, this is the biggest inflationary expense that anybody will incur. So in this context, it is extremely important for everybody to have a proper financial plan. Now, an important element of the financial plan is to define what your financial goals are. While I have written here that the goals could be own house, children's education, you need to actually define your goals very precisely. For example, if you say, I need for my son's education for a degree in US college in 2017, 50 lakhs of rupees at current prices. Or for my daughter's marriage, 25 lakhs of rupees at current prices in 2022. This is the kind of precise goal that you need to make in order to be able to implement an effective financial plan. Once you have listed your life goals, you need to look at how you can manage your current wealth, your current income streams, and the future income streams that are likely to happen to you to achieve these goals. And that is the essence of the financial plan. If you kept your money stored at home, it actually is eroding in value. This is just a small illustration which all of you understand. But if you were to invest, it grows, and hopefully if it grows ahead of the inflation, you are able to meet your financial goals. A young employee who takes up a job during a 30-year career basically goes through different stages of earnings and different financial needs and different aspirations that he will have, and he needs to match them with the investments. So this is just an illustration of that. All of you understand this. If a family is spending 25,000 rupees today, in 25 years time, they need 1,90,000 rupees at the current inflation of 7%. Actually, the current consumer price inflation is much higher than 7%. Most of the people today, even today, they do not go for private ventures and own ventures, etc. They still take up a job, and these people have got a earning potential for only 30 years. So typically, you join a company, let's say at 25, you work up to 55. And you may live for 25-30 years beyond that. So there is a 30-30 challenge that you have to address. During the 30 years of your career, you need to create enough amount of wealth to be able to take care of your residual 30 years of life. This is an interesting thing in India, what's happening, which is equally, extremely sort of, powerful in terms of what it can do to the social fabric of this country. Today we are talking about the average expectancy of life expectancy. This is for male, Indian male. A female would be 3 to 4 years higher than this. We are talking about 69.7 years, 70 years roughly. And this is likely to increase to 82 in the next couple of generations. And so therefore you are actually talking about a big challenge in terms of in an inflationary environment you need to manage your future. The important factors that you need to consider for an effective financial plan is defining the income that you are getting from all the sources, including your job, your interest on various securities, etc., and the prospective income flows that you are expecting. Second most important thing is to have a flexibility in your financial planning, because there could be black swan events in your life. Something could happen, something may incapacitate a person from working, earning, spouse may be lost, anything can happen. So therefore there is a need for a flexibility in your financial plan. You need to make sure that you have adequate amount of liquidity, because if you do not match your expenses with the finances that are available, you will not be able to meet your life goals. You need to be able to pass on the residual wealth to your next generation in a tax efficient and efficient manner. And the three in between, inflation, interest rate and taxes, in our country especially, they keep changing every year. So you need to be alert. Basically what it means is that it's not enough for you to draw a financial plan, but every year, at least once in a year, you need to be looking at what is happening to these three. These three variables can have a potent impact on your finances in the long term. The essence of the financial plan is not to waste money, not to waste your time. Both are equally important. Some of the important principles I am going to highlight to you. First is the power of compounding, second is the asset allocation, and third I am going to talk about the risk versus reward, which is very important for all of us to understand. Here again, the tax efficiency, the transaction cost and the liquidity, they keep varying over a period of time for different asset classes because of some regulatory changes, some environmental changes, some competitive environment, etc. I have found the best definition about investment. We talked about investment from Benjamin Graham. This is the book Intelligent Investor. You might have read it. This was first published in 1949. I have not found a better definition for investment than this. Please read this. Investment operation is one which, upon thorough analysis, promises safety of principal and a satisfactory return. Anything else he calls it as a speculation. And this is a very important principle that we need to keep in mind while drawing up a financial plan and implementing it. Now this is a mathematical formula all of you can understand easily. Future value is nothing but your future wealth. Present value is your current wealth, including the current savings that you are adding every month to it. R is the return that you are generating from all your asset classes that you invested in. N is the number of years that you are going to invest in. Now, in order to maximize your future wealth, what you got to do is focus extremely sharply on PV, that is the present value, and the savings that you are making from your current incomes. Second is have a combination of asset classes which give you an adequate amount of risk-adjusted return. The important thing is to adjust the risk versus the return. N is of course the large number of years. Now, compounding, Einstein calls it as the discovery. It's the eighth wonder of the world. And many of you would have read the story of the Indians who sold the Manhattan Island in 1600 something, etc. So I have chosen a different example for you. There is a gentleman called Dumbo who has got from his great grand uncle a sum of 50 crores of rupees. And this guy cannot manage his finances. And he meets his childhood friend, Smarty, who works for a private bank. And he strikes a deal with him. And look at the interesting deal that they have struck. Dumbo is giving 50 crores to Smarty in return for Smarty giving him 1 rupee on day 1 and increasing it or doubling it every day thereafter for only 31 days. So from Jan 1 to Jan 31, Dumbo is going to be given 1 rupee, 2 rupees, 4 rupees and so on and so forth. Can you imagine what it translates to in 31 days? They strike the deal and then Smarty is stuck because it translates to 214 crores of rupees. That is the power of compounding. And so obviously, Dumbo has got a nice deal because of the power of compounding. There are a number of asset classes that all of you are familiar with. And there are physical assets, which is what most Indians are focused on. But there are varying levels of risks associated with the financial assets. What I am going to focus is on the risk part of it. The risks are essentially manifested in two parts. One is return of capital, that you have put in a particular investment. The second, of course, is the return on the capital that you have invested. So you have to be focused on both of them. And these risks, they apply to different asset classes in different ways. Now, there are many complicated risks, but I will mention a few of them. If you are talking about a debt security, you are exposed to interest rate risk. You are exposed to credit risk. You are exposed to potentially exchange risk, depending on where your investment is. If there is a foreign exchange involved, there is exchange risk. Similarly, if you have invested in, let's say, corporates, we all know that there are many great companies which existed. Many of you may not know, one of the companies which was probably quoting at the highest price in our lifetime was Nariman Point Back Bay Reclamation Company. Maybe some of the older people might recall this company. This was a listed company apparently. It had the highest per share value. That company does not exist. I have not heard of this name during my lifetime, my career. So there are many companies which have existed and which have exited. So therefore you need to be very careful in terms of understanding and managing these risks. What I have highlighted here is only in terms of low, medium and high. But there is a risk associated with every form of investment and you need to be cognizant of that. The last thing is liquidity, because it is very important for you not to just invest but also be able to encash it when you require the money. And that varies with the different asset classes. Now there are transaction costs that are involved. If you open a savings account, probably there is no transaction cost, but there is the implied transaction cost in the form of minimum deposit that you may have to make, etc., etc. But there are certainly many asset allocation plans. For example, unit-linked insurance plans. There is a very high transaction cost, which many investors do not understand, and they actually end up buying the unit-linked insurance plans. And if you buy real estate, there is a transaction cost associated with buying as well as selling. The stamp duty and the brokerages and other things. Some of the pitfalls that you need to avoid consciously in financial planning and implementing is never borrow for investing. You are not smarter than the market. You are unlikely to be smarter than the market, so never borrow and invest. If you are investing for an enterprise, you are actually leveraging. You are creating a financial leverage for your enterprise. By all means, go ahead and do it, but not for personal finances. Never act on the easy tips and do not average the assets, as the assets actually decrease in the value. And this is something that many people actually fall for, because they think that averaging the cost reduces the cost of acquisition, so therefore in the long term they will gain. And it is quite possible that even the smartest of the people may not understand all the nuances related to the investments. Asset allocation is very important, and here is an illustration in terms of somebody who is very young, he can choose an aggressive investment option where he can invest 65 to 85% in equities and the residual in, let's say, fixed income and cash securities. The important thing to recognize is all the asset classes show extremely high negative correlations over a long period of time. So you will find that the gold is not correlated to US dollars, and the US dollar is not correlated to the crude. The physical assets and the financial assets, they have inverse correlations, etc., etc. So you need to have actually a mix of different assets to be effective in your financial plan. Equity, we all know, is very charming because it's the most talked about. There are business channels 24/7 talking about equities and so on and so forth. But equities indeed have many advantages. One of the factors that impacts your finances, as I mentioned earlier, is basically inflation. And I can tell you the best hedge against the inflation is actually equity investment. But you need to choose the companies which have got pricing power. You need to choose the companies which generate very high return on their capital. Or you need to choose the companies which do not require much capital. Basically what is called the intellectual kind of businesses. Now you find that equity provides you capital appreciation, dividend earnings. Most of that is tax free because dividend is tax free, long term capital gain is tax free, and so on and so forth. So it's extremely tax efficient, fairly liquid. But the thing is, it's an extremely volatile market where there is the gyrations which you may not be able to actually tolerate. But over the long term, equities generate a good amount of return. We have an analysis which is done by our colleagues in the fund industry. You will find that this analysis is nothing but equity prices on a composite basis over the period of year 2000 up to 2012. So what they have done is, if you started from 1st January 2000 up to 31st December 2000, it is 1 year. So they have taken 1 year period, 2 year period, 3 year period every month, which means that 1st January, 1st February, and so on and so forth. What they found is very interesting. In a 1 year period, equity as an asset class has given you as 115% return in 1 year. And at the same time, in one particular year, it has given actually minus 58% return, which is extremely volatile. But what happens over a period of time if you hold it? The moment you hold up to 5 years, you find that the maximum return is 47 and the minimum was 2%. But if you held it for all of the 10 years, you find that it is a more acceptable and more digestible number, which is 19.7% on the higher side and 10.47, which is decent. So therefore, equity investment is for the long term, and equity investment has got to be well diversified. So am I saying that the individual should go ahead and go to the equity market and start buying indexes or whatever? No, because an individual may not be capable of robust analysis, objective analysis. And individual investors may have a limited amount of capital to invest, so therefore they may not be able to diversify adequately. And it's possible that they may not understand the risk associated with the investment and the cost associated with it. So therefore, it is important that, and the individual may not be able to update quarterly what is happening in each company. So therefore, it is important for looking at alternative way of participating, and mutual fund is a very good vehicle. And mutual fund is not merely about equity investments. Mutual fund actually invests in various asset classes. And it is managed by a professional. And the professional is actually compensated based on the returns that he generates for his investors. And the professional is benchmarked. Every month his performance is assessed. His performance is assessed with objective benchmarks, not only his peers. So therefore, it is professionally well managed. It's well regulated because there is a regulator called SEBI who protects the investors' interest at all times. And it is highly liquid. If you wanted 1 crore of rupees, you will get 1 crore of rupees exactly in T+1 or T+3, depending on which class of asset that you have invested. You want as little as 1,000 rupees, you will get in the same time frame. And it is low cost. And so it is one of the best options, and it is highly tax efficient. If you invested even in the debt securities, and the debt securities adjusted for the inflationary impact through cost inflation index, you actually find that you pay no tax. You pay no tax on equities, you pay no tax on debt securities as well, as long as you hold them for the long term, which is 12 months plus. And there are variety of products, including products which are focused on Chinese equities, Brazil equities, equities in US market, etc., etc. So you have actually a wide spectrum of investments. You have government securities and you have various other things. So it is entirely possible for one to consider this thing. Here I want to talk about one more reason, one more compelling reason why people should consider a professional manager to manage his personal finance. Human nature is such that I'm going to make some characteristics of human beings which you may feel is derogatory. It is not derogatory actually. Human beings are supposed to be lazy. They are supposed to be greedy. They are supposed to have a lot of vanity. They are supposed to be ambitious. They always act in self-interest. And they are actually quite ignorant people. Now, these are not actually, derogatory statements. And I will explain why. When I am saying human being is lazy, it's actually the very nature of human being to do everything efficiently. So if I ask you to do a task, you will always try to do it in the most efficient manner. In fact, this is the motivation for human beings to excel and progress in human life. So it is a very character of, we being lazy, actually we are progressing as compared to the rest of the animals. Now, second thing I said, we are greedy. Why are we greedy? We are never satisfied with any output that we get with a unit of input. If you put in 1 unit of effort, you always try to maximize. If yesterday you got X, today you want X plus. And that is basically the economic principle of allocating resources. So there is nothing wrong with this human characteristics. But mind you, these very characteristics actually prevent your brain in terms of implementing objective financial plan. And this is proven through various experiments. I'll give one simple example to you, which I'm sure many of you will get it right. If you went to a shop to buy sugar, and the shopkeeper told you, saying that I'm giving you 40% off, take this pack at this price. Alternatively, I give another deal. I give you 50% pack free along with this. Which one would you take? Anybody wants to venture? Answer? Both. That's a smart one.
One of each. Say the question again.
If you went to a shop and you wanted to buy sugar, the shopkeeper told you, I can give you 2 deals. Deal 1, 40% off on the price. Deal 2, I give you 50% pack free. Which one would you like to choose? Second one. Now this is most common. This is the most common response that you will get. But mathematically, I can tell you, the first one is far better for you economically. The reason being, if your pack is 100 rupees, and if you got 40% off, you are actually paying 60 rupees. In the second case, you are paying 100 rupees and you are getting 1.5 packs. So effectively, what have you paid? 66, 67. So you actually paid 10% more in the second option. The reason why human brain thinks like this is because we use what is called the intuitive intelligence. And this is a big subject by itself. Now, the best example that I can give you for intuitive intelligence is somebody like Sachin Tendulkar. Why does one batsman score so many runs so consistently without getting out when the same quality of bowling is faced by different batsmen? The reason is intuitive intelligence. I'm sorry.
You wouldn't calculate the cost of petrol to go to the shop again.
Okay. So these are some of the characteristics why it is important for a human being to sort of, not experiment with his finances, but to go with some objective financial plan. Right? This is unimportant. Transaction costs associated with the mutual funds. Tax benefits I have already mentioned to you, associated with the mutual funds. There is something called a lazy form of investment, systematic investment, where you say every month debit my account X amount of money and put it in the mutual fund. And you give a mandate for the next 10 years, religiously every month they will debit your account and they put it in the mutual fund scheme. So that option again takes away the risk of taking a call on the market. You don't have to look at the CNBC in the morning to take a call on whether to invest, not to invest, etc. These are some of the schemes, and you will find that this is just analysis that we have done in terms of in the recent past different categories. There are many schemes actually which qualify to be in this list. You will find that there are several schemes which have given as much as 28-29% annualized CAGR return for 15-20 years, and these are tax free. And if somebody wants to go for investing in the mutual funds, there are many scientific tools which are available. Mutual funds talk about the alpha that they generate, and there are many mathematical terms like Sharpe ratio, Sortino ratio, etc., which are too complicated for the ordinary individual to understand. So what we recommend is go with a financial advisor. Choose a financial advisor who has got experience pretty similar to the way you choose your family doctor. Choose somebody who's got experience and whose interest is aligned with you. Okay, basically his compensation should be aligned with your benefit. And he must be able to provide you all the services in terms of providing you product related information, transaction related service, and so on and so forth. And look at his style by talking to a couple of his customers so that you get an idea about him, etc. And have clarity in terms of how you are compensating him and what he is doing for you in terms of explaining to you how your funds are performing, how your investments are performing, how the investments are performing vis-a-vis the other asset classes and other similar kind of funds. There are other important avenues which I cannot cover because of the brevity of time. Insurance, for example, is one of the most important asset classes that you require in order to make an effective financial plan. Some other day, maybe one of my colleagues I will get to cover the insurance because it's a big subject by itself. And there is another interesting financial plan that is introduced by the Government of India in the interest of the pensioners. As you know, the government employees no longer are guaranteed pension. They are actually contributing towards their pension themselves from their own salaries since 2004. And this is a scheme which is available to ordinary citizens as well. It's an extremely low cost, well balanced, brainless scheme where you can contribute every month, and it's extremely tax efficient for the people who are actually earning a salary. It's not for the people who are not earning a salary, because from the employer directly contribution can be made to this plan and you can accumulate a large amount of financial saving there. So to summarize, it's very important for an individual to have clear life financial goals defined, have clarity in terms of the sources of wealth that you've got and the income sources that you're likely to have, based on which develop a very objective financial plan, preferably with the help of an expert advisor, implement it with discipline, and all of us can be as rich as the Americans. Thank you.